Directed by Brad Anderson and starring Milla Jovovich and Luke Evans, we are talking WORLDBREAKER. And this is a science fiction drama movie with hints of The Quiet Place and 28 Days Later. So the setting is a sort of dystopian future where there has been some sort of emergence from these creatures from underground that they call breakers. And, you know, these are deadly creatures and they have wiped out large swathes of humanity. And now humanity is living, the remains are living in this kind of future without any kind of animals because they've all been killed, or more or less all of them been killed. You know, little resources and things like this. Now these breakers are kind of like spider-like type, you know, monsters, and the added kind of element to this is if they kind of injure you, like pierce your skin a little bit like a zombie bite, you'll turn into what they call a hybrid, which is a kind of, well, a bit like a zombie, to be honest with you. This sort of other sort of humanoid sort of style creature. Now, interestingly, the idea here is that men are more susceptible to change than women because of the kind of the chemistry of the brain or something. So, yeah, so men really have been kind of wiped out, and women, although they can be, you know, changed, they're less likely to be. So it falls to mainly women to be the bulk of the fighting force at this sort of stage in the story. And the story focuses on this family, with the mother played by Milla Jovovich, the father played by Luke Evans, and this young daughter. Now, despite the movie saying it stars Milla Jovovich, she's really only in a few scenes, to be honest with you, because she's off fighting the war. And the main character is this young girl, 15-year-old girl. Luke Evans is in it a little more. He is kind of present through the story, although the focus is on this young girl. So don't be expecting to go into this seeing lots of our Milla, because you won't see a huge amount. Let's talk about what works in this movie's favour. Now, it's very much a drama-based movie, and I think when you have a movie which focuses much more on character, it's important to have, you know, relatively good acting. And when you've got, you know, like Luke Evans and Milla Jovovich, who, to be fair to her, you know, certainly I wouldn't say a bad actress, I think the acting is solid for those sort of characters. Our young girl is asked to do a lot of heavy lifting because she is the main character. And although I don't think her acting is quite on par with the adults, I don't think it's terrible necessarily. So the acting here is, you know, at least okay for the most part. You know, and when say Luke Evans, I think makes for an interesting and kind of layered sort of character. This injured guy who's having to kind of now look after his daughter, and effectively kind of train her on this kind of remote island, you know, ready for when she can be old enough to go and join the fight, so to speak. The movie has a lot of exposition, and we'll come on to it again, but I do think the movie has somewhat of a neat way of trying to kind of tell us as an audience. So because the future now doesn't have things like, you know, television and the internet, a lot of the kind of the information is given by stories. So Luke Evans is telling his daughter stories, and a lot of this is based on this kind of mythical human hero. So, you know, he's telling his daughter these kind of stories, and that's basically their kind of entertainment. But it's also a way to give us, the audience, exposition about what has happened. So this movie is quite exposition heavy, and again, it's something we'll come on to, but I think at least it's delivered in a way which I think is quite sort of, you know, an interesting kind of device, and kind of works into the kind of the plot, so to speak. As far as our kind of creatures are concerned, I actually kind of quite like the fact that there's kind of two phases in regards to these creatures. We have our prime creatures and then our sort of hybrid creatures. So it makes for sort of some interesting sort of biological questions and things like this. I mean, we're not given a huge amount of information, in a sense, about these creatures. They are sort of kept somewhat at arm's length, but what we do get, I think, is certainly interesting. I do feel maybe that this movie's budget limited the amount of you know, footage with these sort of things on, but nonetheless, I think there's, you know, just the way these things are, it does have some kind of interesting elements to its kind of sort of story here. When we do have our action sequences, they're kind of relatively kind of well done. Again, there's limitations in regards to the budget, and there's really sort of two action sequences. They're not big action sequences. There's one at the beginning and one sort of towards the end. But nonetheless, I do think some of the kind of the sort of stunt work and stuff is quite fun. And there's a decent scene where we learn that these hybrids, you have to actually destroy the brain. So one's got a severed head and is still kind of coming at you because the brain is still active, and it makes for a kind of a quite good scene. So let's think about what doesn't work. Okay, as I mentioned, there is a lot of exposition on the movie. The vast majority of this movie is Luke Evans training his teenage daughter on this island, and then them just conversing. So it's a lot of talking in rooms, talking in the woods, things like this. So the dialogue, I've got to be honest with you, isn't the best. I think the acting isn't necessarily bad. The dialogue isn't sparkling, shall we say. Like I said, I do quite appreciate the way they've delivered this exposition method of kind of telling you the stories. But even with that, I still feel that sometimes the dialogue ends up being quite ham-fisted in a way, and feels sort of unnatural, and, you know, humans wouldn't speak like this. The movie's focus is on the daughter. She definitely has the most sort of screen time, and although I don't think necessarily her acting is necessarily bad, I don't think she's quite strong enough to kind of lead a film, to be honest, as the main character. The movie is mainly her talking to her father, or her talking to this other girl that kind of washes ashore, basically. And she just doesn't have that sort of that presence as of yet as an actress to really sort of command the scene. I don't really like to kind of talk too much about younger actors, but since this is the main character, you can't really help it, if you know what I mean. Because again, I don't think her acting is in the bad category necessarily, but it's not exactly sparkling either. The movie will leave you frustrated in regards to the little amount of world building that this movie actually does. I do think the movie really squanders quite a neat idea for these kind of creatures, really not giving you much information. I do feel this is probably a choice to sort of have these creatures only the barest hints of what they're actually about, kind of given to us as the audience, and leaving them with some mystery. And although I do appreciate them, that it does ask some interesting questions, ultimately I do feel the movie, it just doesn't do the work in establishing them. You know, they're just kind of monsters, and we're not really given anything about their origin, you know, things like that, how intelligent they are they just animals, how their kind of relationship with the hybrids are, the life cycle. Nothing really, we're not getting really much information at all. So it's a little frustrating, and particularly the ending. It threatens to have this big action sequence, and then ultimately it stops. So again, I suspect this is down to budgetary reasons. Well, the kind of two action sequences that we do get, they're not exactly big scale, and they've used a lot of things like we have a sequence at the beginning where Milla Jovovich's character is fighting one of the breakers, one of the kind of the prime sort of creatures, but we don't really see it. We only ever see like her legs, because she's sort of kind of obscured in the creature's legs, because it doesn't want to do the VFX work, I suspect, down to budgetary reasons. So again, it's kind of frustrating. So we only really get sorts of glimpses and things like that with these creatures, and they are made via CGI, and you can kind of see the CGI isn't the best, to be honest with you. It's a little bit on the kind of the wobbly side. The hybrids are created practically, and the later action sequence is more with the hybrids, which is done by stunt people clearly. So that you do get a better look at, which is probably arguably the better stunt scene. But again, it's not exactly big scale. We're talking about 2 or 3 these creatures, and that's kind of it. So overall, this movie is a little underwhelming and, dare I say, a little boring, to be honest. It focuses a lot on the human drama, a lot on exposition, a lot on the relationship with the father and daughter. It isn't the most of interesting, you know, when you've got this alien menace or whatever they are, kind of like these creatures in the background threatening humanity. That's kind of what you want to see, not the kind of the relationship necessarily between a father and daughter. You can do that without any aliens and stuff. You can just have a drama about a father and daughter. So I feel this movie really promises to deliver a kind of futuristic science fiction, you know, dystopian apocalyptic movie, and kind of has that as window dressing, but is really more interested in telling you about the human condition, in which case you didn't need all this stuff to begin with. It's a 4 out of 10 for me. It's an okay movie, but it's, I think, a frustrating one. Have you seen it? What were your thoughts? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing it next time.